On this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds, we talk about the calm before the storm. We talk about family life balance, tips for working at home, leveraging written articles and podcasts, press kits, cross promotion, and more. Let's get into it.
Game begin.
Let's go.
Go back to the shadow. You shall not fail. Crowdfunding Nerds.
Amazing.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I am your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined as always by Sean and not Rick, which is very common, but Rick still works at the company, but he doesn't like getting up early. And so he's always, he's around, he's lurking. But anyway, on this episode, this is the, so when this airs, it's actually going to be the day before my personal Kickstarter launch for the Deliverance expansion. And so what I thought we would do is talk about what I tentatively refer to as the calm before the storm. And, you know, for many of you, some of you have been in this position before and others are coming closer and I'm here right now. So I've been here once before myself for my own project, and now I'm back again, and I've never really talked about what it feels like to be a week out, but I'm feeling very similar emotions and some odd thoughts have entered into my head that I recollect entered last time. And so I just thought it'd be a good idea to talk about that and to share what is happening, what I'm going through, and that kind of thing, so that you can prepare and prepare for this moment as well. So how's that for framing our topic, Sean?
Good. Yeah, I think that's a good place to start. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how are you feeling?
I haven't showered in like 6 days. Let my beard grow out. Like, it's like my hair, like the top of my hair, you can see like it's actually like, I have hair now and my beard has grown out. And I feel like, you know how when you get really sick and you just don't want to do anything, and then after a while you're like, all right, now I'm gonna, I feel like I'm coming out of it, and then you remember that you needed to brush your teeth and shower, and you just feel like a new person. You change your bed sheets, and it's like, wow, I've turned over a new leaf. I'm not there yet. I'm still suffering. I'm actually also sick. Kind of getting over that too. But with the extra amount of work, between Next Level Web, Crowdfunding Nerds, and Deliverance or Low End Games, that is a very, very full plate. Not to mention all the children I have. There have been a lot of things that have had to suffer. For example, I haven't been to jiu-jitsu in a little while, which, everybody at the team is wondering, where's Andrew, and certain things, like, just because of the raw amount of work required, have to be set aside. My kids are asking me why they don't see me very much and that kind of thing. It's like, nobody put them up to it. They just are asking me, and my wife is telling them, yeah, daddy has to work really hard. He's working long and, sometimes into the night, and I'll get to put them to bed, but, see them in the morning, see them at night. But it's almost like I'm, just one door separate from them, because my office, I work from home, but they, I it's like, it might as well be a million miles away for, 10 to 12 hours every day. So.
Yeah, well, I imagine no one will want to wrestle you at jiu-jitsu if you haven't showered for 6 days. Yeah. Jiu-jitsu funk.
There's always one guy. There's always the one guy, like the guy that smells like cat pee.
Yeah.
It's like, just always smells like cat pee.
That's my secret sauce. That's my strategy. And I suppose with your family, they probably understand that this is temporary. It's probably, maybe you want to talk a little bit about boundaries and communicating that to your family, because they probably know that you're burning the midnight oil, so to speak, but they probably recognize that it's only for time. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. In fact, actually, that's extremely important. And I feel like I've been to this place a couple of times where I feel like I can do anything if my family's behind me and encouraging and whatnot, and everything's going good. And then all of a sudden my wife says, that she's having a real hard time, and the whole plan, all the world just comes crashing down, because if my home is not you know, I guess in balance, then I can't be effective at anything, which is a strange thing to say. So it's you know, very important that we had discussions a long time ago about, you know, and of course she's been through this before as well. So, you know, with our first Kickstarter, but normally what I do is I work, you know, like around between 8 and 9 in the morning. I get started, typically end around 5 o'clock, maybe 5:30 in the evening, and that's the normal work day. And I'm able to, you know, join for, you know, to help my wife make dinner and, you know, hang out with the kids and that sort of thing. But as so with in this circumstance, I'm getting off at the earliest at 7 p.m. And normally I can usually just step out in the middle of the day, take a lunch break with the family and see them, and that's a big thing that they always enjoy, you know, to see daddy in the middle of the day. It's kind of a fun thing. um and so what we did was, you know, my wife and I, we talk about how I'm going to get all of the time that I need in order to do this. And if I'm like, I'm not going to sacrifice anything, I'm just going to work longer, and I'm going to go work out, and I'm going to do all of the things that I need to do for my own mental health, then what ends up happening is the family suffers. So when you take time, eventually either, usually it's one of two things: it's your sleep or your family or both. And that's why when you're single, it's a lot easier to run a publishing company, because you don't have a family that you're beholden to, or that you're responsible for, and all of that. But of course there are some, you know, big upsides to the family, right? But we so our plan was that I went to a big convention, which was Strong Tower Con, and we had a lot of fun there. And I did this big raid boss thing, which actually we were, you know, said we were going to talk about, and then decided not to, and we'll eventually get to it, right? But then after that, I took a good 4 days off. So I got back on Sunday night. I took a nap on Monday and got to work, and worked Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then I took Friday off. I didn't. My wife took my phone and hid the phone, and it was so funny. Like, I wanted her to, of course, but anytime that I looked at my phone or my computer, I got burpees, which is an exercise. If you're not familiar, it's like a jumping jack, and then you have to go down to a push up, and that's one. So you have to do a jumping jack, and then close to it, at least, for those that aren't familiar. So I would get 5 burpees every time I looked at my phone. I didn't even need to unlock it. I just had to have it in my hand, and I would get like, she would force me to work out, and or if I'd be in my office, 5 burpees. And there were times I probably did like 30 or 40 burpees in a day, and that adds up. Um, but you know, we have our methods for how I keep off of technology, because as soon as I touch my phone, what happens is I see something that needs doing, and I'm like, oh, I just need 5 minutes, and then 30 minutes later, because you know how Andrew
Rabbit
time
trail.
works. Yeah. So it's something that we're purposeful about, staying away from all technology, all work. And so I got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and a Monday. I took that time off, and it was like the vacation before life gets really hectic. And that was something that was really important for the family. To, you know, my wife wants to make sure that my kids know that I love them, and that, you know, all of that. But then there's the understanding of like, okay, now it's go time. I'm going to try to take off in the evenings, but if I have to work, then I don't need to be ashamed to say, honey, I need to spend a couple, like, if I say I need to spend 15 extra minutes doing something, my wife is prepared for like 2 hours. Oftentimes that's what it turns into, because there's always something more to do that's very important that won't get done without me personally doing it. And those things just need to get knocked down, like one task after another, because if they don't, then they probably won't get done, or if they do, they'll get done last minute and not very well. So that time is coming, the last minute is coming, and I'm going to have to, I'm sure that the very last day, you know, I'll be working super hard, and up till like 3-4 in the morning until that was how it worked last time for our Kickstarter. But eventually it becomes go time and the family's prepared for it. We also, after our Kickstarter, so a couple of months later, we're going to go to San Diego, California with my, to we're going to do a big vacation there. It's like a 2.5 weeks of vacation that we're taking, and I'll largely be off work. December is usually a good month. It's a little bit slower around here. And so that's another thing so my family had some time to be with me, like the calm before the storm, or for them at least, and then they have something to look forward to. When they can't see me now, they get to comfort themselves with, we're going to take this huge vacation. It's going to be awesome. Tickets already paid for. We're ready to go, And so I think that is very important for balance. I don't think balance is 50-50. I think, a lot of the time mine is like 90-10, where 90% work, 10% family, and 0% jujitsu and very little sleep. But that's balanced because, it's what it needs to be. And then other times, we've got that 50-50. But if you look over the course of, let's say, a long period of time, 3 months, then my life would be a lot more balanced. I just get a lot more family in sometimes and less other times,
Yeah, I think that's a real danger by not being balanced. George Lucas, when he was making Star Wars, kind of went through a bit of a messy divorce, and I wonder if that's because he was just like so dedicated to making those films that kind of destroyed his marriage. And that's always a danger with people who are very driven and passionate, is that you want to make sure that you're not burning bridges and just destroying things
Right.
by not prioritizing things correctly. But I completely understand this idea of trying to disconnect from technology. I remember once when I was like setting my alarm, but like I unfortunately started checking messages on Google Spaces where we have our work stuff, and everyone's like, "Go to sleep." I was like, "I was just setting my alarm," but like answering all these questions because you do go down these rabbit trails. But it's very important. I find that when you're working, and when you're resting, you're resting, and it's oftentimes when you're working, it's like, oh yeah, you get distracted, and you want to do other things, and then when you're not, you're supposed to be resting. It's like, oh, I want to go back to work. It's you got to really like sort of force yourself to stay in lane, because it can just all become, especially when you work from home, right? You can really check your phone at any time, and it becomes all consuming. But with that being said, I've actually learned the how much you can get done in the day if you just cut sleep out of your life. Like I'm surprised at how much I can get done if I just take, I think that I can go for a couple of days with very little sleep. And I've learned that. So it's really interesting. There comes a point where it catches up on you, but you can probably go, I found that I can go about, 3 days in a row with very little sleep and still be productive. And then about the fourth day, I was like, okay, I need to lie in and get like a full 8 hours sleep. But you can get a lot more done in the day by just cutting out some sleep in your life, which is really important. So there's been some nights where I've been waking up quite early and getting a lot done before my kids are up, and that's great because everyone's asleep. I'm not disturbed. I can really focus, and then I can get them breakfast and get back to work later. But I've been finding that particularly helpful lately.
Yeah, I find that my best writing work is done in the morning when everything is quiet. It's like my brain is fresh and I'm able to do certain tasks that I just can't do during the middle of the day. I find in particular creativity is one of the hardest things to control by far. I feel like, in fact, many times, back when I started with the first Deliverance, really early on, I want to say like 2018, I decided that every Monday was going to be devoted to Deliverance work. So I have roughly 8 hours of workday dedicated to Deliverance, and then Tuesday through Friday would be dedicated to the main business. And I generally found that it was so hard to get 8 hours of productivity in on that one day. And I would be very frustrated. Oftentimes I would set a list of things to do for myself and then actually get to work right around like 2 or 3 o'clock sometimes, on the creative stuff, because there's a lot that happens subconsciously with creativity. and you can't just like do it. But then when I started to get to work, I found that I couldn't stop. I didn't want to stop because I was getting so much done and there was so much positive progress being made, but it was so hard for me to get rolling. It was a strange time. So I found that I'm actually very productive in the early hours between like 5 and 9 a.m. My time, and then so like before the sun comes up to when like before breakfast, and then again between like 2 and 6:30 I'm very productive as well. And that's actually that latter one. Oftentimes if you go through a caffeine crash, or you or you eat bad food and you kind of go through the the 2:30 feeling, they call it, when your body starts to crash, that I can control that by, there are a couple of methodologies I use to control that so that I'm productive at 2:30. I try to generally eat clean, and drink a lot of water. Those things are highly undervalued, and really just we had an episode with this guy Dan Whaley a while back. We talked about water and kind of health and fitness, and I think we had Julie Litchfield on at one point to talk about that, or if we didn't, we definitely need to. She's a contact of mine that's kind of like supplements and whatnot. But water, like getting enough water is so important. Your brain functions if you have water, and if you are dehydrated, you actually can't think as well, and therefore your creativity is stunted. And so I find that there's there's a neuroscientist that's a very well-known neuroscientist named Dr. Andrew Huberman, and I recommend everybody listens to him as far as his advice on health and the way that neurons work in the brain. He talked about how whenever you want to get up, you have to get a lot of photons into your eyes. So you have to open up all the windows, you have to turn on all the lights, and then your body is going to tell you that it's time to wake up, eventually after doing that at a consistent time. And that's how you kind of become a morning person, right? So one of the other things that he talks about is caffeine, and he loves caffeine, so he doesn't actually listen to his own advice here. But he said that if you wait 90 minutes after you wake up to ingest caffeine, you won't experience a crash later in the day. Like normally people wake up and have coffee immediately, and that's how they wake up. But if you just deal with that sleepy feeling, that's some sort of element in your body that your body is cleansing, and it's making you sleepy. It's making you feel sleepy and groggy and whatnot. And your body needs to cleanse that in order to, just that's how your body works. But if you use caffeine, what it does is it specifically blocks that receptor so that whatever that stuff is still floating around in your body, but it's not able to be cleaned out and you feel awake. So it caffeine blocks that. So the problem is if you have caffeine in the morning, then right around 2:30, your body starts to once again absorb and like deal with that stuff that happened or that was created in your body when you were sleeping, and like clearing it out. And so that's where another way, that I would crash is just by having caffeine really early and trying to be productive and go like right early in the morning. And so I've kind of learned to embrace creativity over, just rather than trying to force it and say I will be creative between the hours of 12 and 2 or whatever. It just happens when it happens, and I just kind of lean into that. And now there's been so much subconscious thought that's happened over the course of the last year or more, that all of it just needs to get done. So a lot of the creative thinking is complete, and now it's time for action, creating the assets, creating the the gifts of how to play, and describing what it feels like to play the game, and all of that. I created 6 pledge levels and 10 add-ons yesterday, and other things too. So it's a really an interesting I don't know, formula for me.
So, in terms of the pre-campaign marketing and how you're feeling in terms of the launch, where are you sitting there? Are you feeling pretty good about how it's going? Are you a little bit apprehensive, anxious? Where's your sort of general gist in terms of what you've been seeing in the pre-marketing and
Yeah.
your expectations for the actual campaign?
Yeah, and this is interesting because it's kind of like a two-part thing. I guess I have two different perspectives. One is I have been very diligent to write updates and things for Kickstarter. Just like my Kickstarter backers, we had 2,717 backers in the first campaign. Been very diligent to write updates. We had about 4,400 emails that were a part of the first campaign, and before launch. And now we have over 8,000. We have I don't know, I could probably look and see exactly how many. But it's like
8,125.
8,125. Yeah. So we're almost double. The email list is consistently solid. The Kickstarter, updates are consistently solid. And we have a Facebook group that has almost 3,000 members, and a Discord that's approaching like between 12 and 1,500 members. And all of those places are generally, so they're a combination of paid advertising that has filled those things and organic advertising. But I'll split these things into two groups. We have people that experienced Deliverance and really enjoy it, and that I've worked to generally turn into fans. But and then after that, we've also got another group, or aside from that, we've got another group of people who maybe have not experienced Deliverance, but have seen ads and have jumped on the email list and are interested. So the first group, I have worked as diligently as possible. I don't think I've worked more diligently on anything in my life than trying to make sure these people stay updated and know how to play the game and have actually experienced the game. So every single person that buys the game, I've tried to work as hard as I can to get those people to actually open it up and play it. And that is a really important piece of marketing that I think is going to, it should be responsible for the biggest increase. So that biggest explosion needs to happen from the people who have played the game and love it, right? There's this other group now, and that's because we've launched once already. But then there's this other group of people that if it's somebody's first Kickstarter and they're listening to this, they're like, well, I don't have a group like that. Well, you've got all this work that you can do to build followers. You can go to conventions, you can build your email list, you can run ads and all of that. I have another group of people like that. And as I mentioned, we had 4,400. So we've sold about 5,000 games, and we have it available on Tabletop Simulator, and we're in right now alpha on Board Game Arena. And so we have ways for people to access and experience the game, including the physical edition. And so we probably had, several tens of thousands of people play it at this point. And, a lot of social proof and other things like that. But these people generally, for the most part, they haven't yet played the game. They're cold leads that we got via Facebook that went to a landing page that saw something they liked and were, and then jumped on the email list. We've run ads on all sorts of different places at this point, and that's the other kind of an unknown. Last time we converted about 20%. It was like 21.3% of those people that I added within the 3 months, and for us it's been 2 months of marketing this time. And I expect we won't get as high a conversion rate from those people as we did from the first group. In the first time we went to Kickstarter, we won't get percentage wise as high of a conversion rate, but I do expect we'll get, but an appropriate conversion rate between 10 and 15% of those people should absolutely be backing the campaign. Maybe, last time it was higher. Maybe it will be higher this time too. But I do expect that we're going to have the biggest percentage, if you will, of our backers early on, especially, are going to be the people that have experienced the game, that love it, and whatnot. So I think that there's potential for like rocket fuel in this campaign, and but I also think it's an interesting time because there's a recession, where inflation is higher, people's money is not going as far, they're spending more on their groceries than they were before, their gas, and the job market is not as the outlook is not as positive, and other things. And so I'm looking at various campaigns, and overall it seems like it's a little harder to get people to part with their money now. And so there are a lot of factors there, but I think eventually, regardless of the circumstances, you just have to launch. You have to launch when you're ready. And you can wait for the perfect circumstances for the economy to come back and all of that, and people to have plenty of money to burn. And now whatever the new president in the US is gonna whoever it is, I'm kind of excited about this because I have tons of children, but they're going to supposedly do like a tax refund that's like a really big refund per child you have. And they did that once. I think Joe Biden did that once during the his administration, and it was like $3,000 per child or something like that. It was really high. And so I'll be filthy rich if that happens, like I have so many children that I'll blow all of it on board games. But the so and probably clothing for all of my children.
Toilet paper.
Yeah. And now I bring that up because we had some things like that happen in 2020, 2021. You had people getting money for COVID relief and whatnot. And I want to say 2020 or 2021 was like the biggest Kickstarter year. It was like a banner Kickstarter year. I mean, tons of games were sold out. People were spending that money on games. And now there's nothing that's like a COVID relief or whatever. But if you were to wait, like if I were to say, oh, I'm just going, there's a little I'm not quite sure what people are wondering who the president's going to be in the US and whatever. Like if I look at these factors and decide that I can time the market, that is a mistake. It's almost always a mistake to actually time the stock market, and it's almost always a mistake to decide best. In fact, I believe that during 2020, when everybody was like, COVID is the black plague and everyone's going to die and hiding in their bunkers, before the I guess I don't want to get too far down that rabbit hole or anything, but a lot of creators stopped. They pulled back their advertising on Facebook and whatnot, and they pulled their Kickstarter campaigns, and then Frosthaven launched, and Frosthaven raised nearly $13 million in I think it was April 2020. And I remember I was working on Ascension Tactics at that time with Justin Gary and in their studio, and we started getting clicks for like 7 cents and leads for like 35 cents. It was the lowest cost. In fact, Deliverance, that was before Deliverance was ready. We went to Kickstarter about a year later, and I started running ads because it was like so cheap. There were lots of people on social media, and everybody decided to time the market and pull out. And so it was like all of these people are mine for the taking, and I just run at the time it was like $600 of ads in a month, and we hit like a huge windfall of email subscribers and whatnot, under $1 per email subscriber. And just it was incredible. It was like, in fact, it was as low as like 44 cents or 42 cents per email subscriber, which was incredible. And that's because everyone tried to time the market. So I recommend not trying to time the market. Just don't launch on like Tuesday, November 5th. Okay. Like I will tell you, don't launch on that day. That's the presidential election day. Nobody's going to be paying attention to Kickstarter. And, that's in the US, of course. But the day afterward is fine. The day before is fine. I mean, everybody's going to, half the country is going to feel like their world ended on November 6th when whatever happens. And then they'll realize, oh, wait, I'm okay. Actually, like nothing immediately changed around my surroundings. I have the same family. I have the same friends. I can go to the same places, and then the world goes on. And that's what happened in 2020 with all of those campaigns that were live. it was like Tuesday, November 6th, or maybe it was the 7th. And, the ad campaigns that we were running dipped on that day, and then we're fine before and after, So anyway, went on a little rant about trying to time the market, but I'm here. I am saying, wondering what's going to happen. People, I have a very expensive all-in pledge. Mine's $259 for every single thing. So if you've never owned Deliverance before, you can get every single thing, every cosmetic add-on, all the gameplay content for $259, and you save about $100 off of, what will, all those things, buying all those things later. And and that's pretty expensive. All the gameplay bundles, $149 if you just want the game, the deluxe game and the deluxe expansion. That's a pretty high ask. You can buy the expansion for $79, which it's like a really great deal, but you need the base game of Deliverance already.
What I suspect is going to happen, Andrew, is that a lot of people will probably go all in, and this is probably something we need to leverage in the Kickstarter updates, is that a lot of people are going to want to get the expansion who already had the base game, but they will probably buy the base game as a gift for somebody else. So I imagine that they will go all in, and they will keep the expansion content for themselves, but then they're going to give away the base game to a friend or someone else. So I think that's something that we can leverage in our marketing messaging, and that's something that's unique when it comes to an expansion, because you do have a customer base who has purchased the game, who's coming back, and they can easily purchase another copy and give it to a friend. So I think that's going to be a huge part of our marketing messaging is, hey, make sure to go all in so that you get this extra game that you can give as a gift. And it's going to make a great gift. We've done this before. We delivered all our products, and you're going to get it at the greatest price that you can get it. It's going to be more expensive later on down the road. So jump on now and get a gift that you can give to someone at some stage. So I suspect a lot of people are probably going to go for the higher pledge, but we'll see. But I think that's definitely a messaging, and we can kind of give people a reason why they should have a higher pledge.
Yeah, and it's also, it's not something that was lost on me that many of our fans have been asking about that. There were a lot of people last time when we launched, they were like, "Hey, I'd like to grab 4 copies for for presents and whatnot." And I eventually did this 4-unit, order 4 units of the base game and get a little bit more off. And so some people bought that pledge. But what I've learned since then, Kickstarter, and that was in 2021 over the summer, Kickstarter has implemented add-ons, like official add-ons. I want to say it was after that. And I have included several different types of things that I've titled like gift bundle and other things like that. And those are, it's very purposeful that whatever you get, you can get a gift for someone else. You can get, so like the standard pledge that everyone is going to want that owns Deliverance and really has all the stuff. I created an everything new pledge. It was $119, and it comes with the expansion, all the cosmetic add-ons for the expansion, and that's that's great. So if somebody is like, I want to buy this for myself, I love this game and I want to have more of it, I want to have all the things, then that's what they do. But then if they're like, I'd really like to support this campaign more, there's just nothing else for them. And so what we can do instead is use the language of, you can get gifts for friends. And there are people that are very willing to do that. And there are people that have been vocal in the past with me that are like, I really want a pledge level that I can get as a gift or whatever. And we had people buy, anywhere from 1 to 5 units extra just for as a gift. And so now what I've done, but there are so many others that were probably silent that did not say anything. If you have people that are asking for something, you probably have 10 times that many people that are not saying anything that would appreciate that and would find value in that. Maybe some people that don't even know until they actually see it. They're like, yeah, this game looks great. And I can get a gift. I'm going to get a gift for my friend or whatever. So having that option available, I'm really interested to see what will happen. And originally I thought, I'll do in the pledge manager, I'll give people the ability to upgrade pledges and whatnot. and I'm still going to do that, but I want to make sure that people can upgrade now. And I remember, in our first campaign, I looked just yesterday, I looked at all the numbers of our first campaign and how much money it raised each day. And we raised generally between 1,500. So there was one day we raised like 500. But for the most part, we raised 1,500 to like 4,500 a day. And there were certain spikes, like one day was like 6,500. And I'm like, why was that? Just kind of trying to study why that was. And it was because we had an update come out that built value in the upgraded components, like the expansion acrylic standees and the neoprene mat and other things like that. So when people were asking, like, why would I get this, and what's the actual value of this item to my play experience, and we were able to answer a lot of those questions such that people were satisfied and were like, okay, I'm going to get this. I need the metal coins because of whatever, or I need the neoprene mat, or that kind of thing. And so it's a really important thing to have upsells for people, and every single upsell you can point to. So maybe I just really want the neoprene mat and that's it. But hey, for whatever, $26 more, I can have acrylic standees and metal coins. Like, that's kind of awesome. So I was mainly interested in the neoprene mat, but I'm going to get the $65 bundle because that is a very, very reasonable bundled price. And, I'm excited about that. So, if people, that's one great way to upsell people without making them feel sold to. People love to buy stuff. They just don't like to be like pushed into, like, hey, back my Kickstarter, man. They don't like that, but they do love when they've decided they like this Kickstarter and they're like, all right, I'm going to get, I own the base game. I'm going to get the expansion and the metal coins because I really wanted the metal coins. Well, it's a really easy upsell to say, okay, but if you wanted to jump into the acrylic standees, then you can get this special bundle, right? So we did that. We did. In fact, we try to make it as easy as possible for people to find the things that they want. So like we had the acrylic standees. We have a base game acrylic standees and we have expansion acrylic standees, and they're about the same price each. So I bundled them for $50. You can buy each one for 25, or you can just get this bundle for 50, and it does save on shipping. But the fact that it's a bundle right next to the acrylic standees, you can get this one or that one or both. It's like people have a choice to select both with a single button, and they are much more likely to do that. So it's something that I'm, pretty excited about as far as the way that the system is working. And then also the fact that they have late pledges available on Kickstarter that I can just have it automatically enabled. That's pretty helpful, pretty useful.
So you're going to use Kickstarter, the late pledge, you're going to jump to Hive. What's the plan?
So the plan is to run, by keeping Kickstarter late pledge open, it's going to allow me to take advantage of, anybody that comes in afterward and is like, oh, I just heard about this game. I'm able to accommodate those people rather than saying, well, you have to wait a month. Right. So Hive is where we're going for our pledge management. And I love Hive. Anybody listening to this, definitely look at hiveinteractive.net. It's a really solid company, but that's our pledge manager. We're going to keep the late pledge open for a little while. When our pledge manager is ready, we'll open the pledge manager and then shut off the late pledge via Kickstarter and just redirect people to Hive. And that way I won't miss out on any money that was supposed to come through. But then when I switch to Hive, I'm able to collect shipping, get all the existing backers to upgrade and do all the things that they wanted. And so that's kind of the plan.
So, Andrew, I know one thing that we've done with the expansion for Deliverance is that we've really tapped into two things: your current audience and cross promotion. Now, the interesting thing about your current audience is that you don't know who's in your email list. So you've had people reach out to you who are in your email list who have connections to like really big institutions. So I think one person who reached out to you was like an editor on a website called Rapzilla, which is like one of the biggest Christian hip hop websites in the world. So
Right.
you got like an article featured there, which is super cool. Someone was connected to Bible Gateway, I believe, which is like one of the largest
Yep.
Bible index or in the
So it's
entire
the
world.
largest Christian website in the world.
Yeah, so we have an article being featured on the Bible Gateway website just simply by what you'd send on email saying, hey, if anybody has opportunities, let me know. We want to, you just basically put out a call and you got all these
Yeah.
responses. So that's one thing that we've done. And so if people listening, that's something they should certainly try as well. You never know who's in your email list. And then number two is we've done a lot of cross promotion. So we've reached out to other publishers who have similar audiences, or their audiences might have similar interests in the themes of deliverance. And we do cross promotion, right? So we're going to direct people to their project and they're going to direct their people to our project. So maybe you want to talk a little bit about those two things, just leveraging your existing audience and then cross promotion.
Sure. Yeah. So I did put out a call to my people. So one of the things that I always tell people, especially first timers, to hustle. So after the first 48 hours, you will enter your mid campaign slump. That would be the time after the initial burst of excitement is over. Everybody that wanted to back the game jumped in. You hope that causes a chain reaction, that a bunch of strangers see the game and are now like, wow, this is great. I'm going to jump in. And what is this thing? And you get something very viral. But a lot of the time that doesn't work out exactly that way. So in really, in either case, I've never personally been a part of a campaign that went extremely viral. Like, that was my campaign, rather. We've had campaigns that have crushed it, but that's other people that have handled those PR, those things. Other publishers that are like, what do I do? How do I handle this? So I haven't personally been like the guy that's where my campaign's going viral. Hopefully it does, but everybody's job in the mid campaign. So you have the first 48 hours, which is the initial burst of action, the last 48 hours or 72 hours, let's say, the last 2-3 days, which is another burst of action. And then the middle campaign, for me, my whole campaign is 24 days. So the mid campaign is going to be, 20 days long. And during that middle of my campaign, I have to find ways, any way to get another set of eyes on Deliverance. And so anybody listening to this, that's your job. During the middle of the campaign, you have two jobs. One is to keep your people engaged and interested and talking to your people, giving them, new things, communicating with them. But then you need to find other people that have no idea who you were, but might be interested in your game, right? And so for me, the number one way is podcast. The number two is articles. So writing an article as a guest for someone else. And maybe number three would be social media. So, I will probably be talking in various groups about, oh, this is happening over here with Deliverance. Are you guys, what's your favorite this or that? Or do you like A or B or other things like that? Anything that I can do to engage people and let them know Deliverance is a thing, right? So what I decided to do was to be proactive about this. And I think that every creator with an email list should be proactive about this. I asked people on my Kickstarter update and in an email blast, if you have a podcast and you would like to talk to me about Deliverance, I would love to do that. If you're open-minded to, if you would like a guest article written about Deliverance, I would be open-minded to that too. I'd love to have any opportunities, that I can. And we ended up getting, turns out that the editor of the blog of BibleGateway.com is a big fan of Deliverance, and he's on mission 13 right now. Evidently, he got slaughtered in mission 13, his last attempt. And he was like, it's Bible Gateway is a division of HarperCollins, a very, very large book publisher, and he was like, it actually looked like spam because of, I don't know, they must have some sort of email program that they write from, and it came in all like choppy looking, and it looked like spam at first. But I this guy wrote me and asked for an article, like 1 to 2,000 word article, to be featured on Bible Gateway, which is, I want to say it has, more than 1 million people a day are looking at whatever's on their site. But the blog doesn't have as much traffic as that, but obviously it has a small piece of that. But then they have 800,000 people on their email list, and whenever they post a blog, it gets sent to their email list. So if I write a 1 to 2,000 word article, we wrote an article that was just about 2,000 words, that, why Christians should play Christian games, and we featured Ezra and Nehemiah, which is a very popular game by Garful Games. Animo and Deliverance were 3 games that we featured there. And just, we talked about, that basic Christian games used to be bad, but now they're actually good ones. And so that one, and what was funny, by the way, is they were like, we can't offer you financial compensation, but we will send it out to 800,000 emails. It's like, yeah, I'm okay with that. That sounds like compensation to me, So
yeah, they didn't charge us, right? That was just
right.
That's
No,
just
they
them
just
saying
wanted content.
we like this project. We want stuff for our blog. Write us an article. And one thing I learned, because I sort of ghost wrote part of that, I kind of set it up and then you kind of finished it up and put your own thoughts into it. But what I found really helpful writing the article, this is something I encourage everyone to do: write an article about your game. Write about what is it, why should people care about it, because that's going to really help you frame your advertising. It's going to really help you frame your press kit. And that's something that I actually developed after doing this. It's like, okay, well, what can I give a journalist or someone who writes articles or a YouTuber? What information can I give them that will make it as easy as possible for them to write an article about Deliverance? So we have a press kit, and I included a huge media dump of logos. I separated photographs, like lifestyle photographs, and like 3D renders and like game art. And we have quotes in there that they say, oh, so-and-so said this about it.
Yeah.
We have pretty much all the information you need to write an article. So all you have to do is open that press kit, and all your research is there. So it could probably take you 15 minutes, to kind of compile the first draft of an article, because we even have a section of what is Deliverance, and we've actually just written out 3 paragraphs that they can put into their own words. But they essentially can just copy and paste that, reword it, and then they've got their introduction. They've maybe got like 50% of their article, and then they just have to put their own spin on it. So I think it's very, very important that if you as a publisher write an article about your game, and it's going to help you craft your press kit. And that's something we've developed now. If you go to playdeliverance.com/press, then you can actually see our press kit, and maybe you can use that as a basis of inspiration for yourselves.
Yeah, and I remember interviewing Ross Thompson, who at the time, I believe he worked for Steamforged, and then he worked for Cephalofair Games. And he has and before that, USAopoly, he has so much experience dealing with the press kit. And I remember just thinking, wow, there's so many things to add into this press kit. And I don't know if I have the bandwidth to do that, but you can, if you know the number of things that you need, so you can use, it's like Sean said, playdeliverance.com/press. You can go there and you can look at what I have. So you need some lifestyle images and other things, right? 3 paragraphs about what your game is. So just check those boxes one at a time. You don't need to wait until like a week before your Kickstarter goes live to do it. You can do it now, right?
Yeah, and then what I could do is I can now reach out to other journalists and just send them emails or send them DMs and be like, hey, this is what Deliverance is. It's coming to Kickstarter. Would you consider writing an article? Here's our press kit. Here's all the information. So making it as easy as possible for them to go, sure. And all the images are there. They just have to, and they're all web optimized. I formatted them for web. So there's none that are like crazy sizes. So all they have to do is download the images, upload them to their website, and they're done in terms of imagery. We even have videos in there. So if they're a YouTuber, they can just download the videos and put them in their video and at least have like overlay or whatever. So it's all there. So I'm hoping that that's going to have some fruit to it later on in the campaign. But that's something I have on my to-do list, just to reach out to a bunch of people and say, here's our press kit. So we'll keep you updated on how that pans out. But it's still something that's
help.
cool.
Like you mentioned, if they're a YouTuber, so we have we didn't talk about this, but we have, I want to say like 13 or 14 reviewers that are going to preview the content for Deliverance. They're going to either do a playthrough of the campaign or a playthrough of Skirmish, or they're going to talk about it and that sort of thing. And so I'm really excited about that. But every one of those people, their videos get enhanced if I can show, if there's any sort of video that I can add. And we did a bunch of little shorts of the actual physical components on the board, and I'm excited about, you know, that we have those things, but the fact that they're available for a videographer just to take and use, a reviewer to take and use in their video, it makes their video better. And, you know, it took, you know, relatively low effort just to put that in the press kit, right? So and that's something that you will have previewers ask you for, like they like, you know, intro graphics, they like, you know, other things like that. So yeah, that was huge. And then you mentioned cross promotion, and I think there's a way to do cross promotion right and a way to totally do it wrong. And the way that I see most creators do it, it's very wrong. So first of all, you should have a spreadsheet of places that you sent your game. You know, that the place that you sent your prototype. The reason that I say that is because I had a in our first Deliverance game Kickstarter launch, we had a bunch of prototypes that I sent over to various content creators, and we had a pledge level that was get a prototype. You know, as an Archangel investor, you get a prototype, and I had 7 of them. I only made like 9 or 10 prototypes, so thank the Lord I had like 6 left, because there were all 7 of those pledges were taken, and I don't know where all the prototypes went. You know, like one creator sent it to the next, and eventually I kind of lost track of where they were. And I had like 6 prototypes, but thankfully, you know, and 7 backers, but thankfully one of the backers was my parents. So they didn't end up getting a prototype, but they were okay with it, you know? And so it was something that I'm tracking now. But then in addition to that, so we have all of our videos, all of our written articles on Board Game Geek, and then in addition, as you mentioned, co-promotion. So co-promotion, the way to do it wrong is to ask anybody for co-promotion. You know, I have people that are like, they're very, we'll say like their pirate game is just not related at all to what my audience is backing Deliverance for. And, you know, if it's a competitive pirate game with, you know, 3 to 8 players, I just have there's very little similarity between that and what Deliverance is. Deliverance is, you know, 1 to 5 player dungeon crawl. So it doesn't make sense for me to like promote that to my people. It's just like they won't value it. And that's the problem. It's like you won't endear yourself to your audience by sharing random stuff with them. But if it's related, then, you know, like I said earlier, people hate to be sold to, but they love to buy stuff. So if it feels like you're actually giving them like good advice, you know, and showing them something that they might actually might be relevant to their interests, then they are going to be much more likely to be to trust what it is that you say in the future. And so I think the right way to do co-promotion is to ask people that have games that are similar to yours in theme and experience, and, you know, ideally people that you would be able to you know, that would be willing to treat in kind and say, hey, yeah, I'll send a blast for you if you send, you know, later, if you send a blast for me now. And then, you know, definitely make sure don't you know, ghost them or anything. But yeah, so like one example was Garful Games released Ezra and Nehemiah. That had 5,000 backers, right? And I thought this would be a perfect thing to co-promote. I personally backed the game. I own it. I actually haven't played it. It's on my shelf of opportunity, if you will, but I backed it all in. I've got the middle coins and everything like that. And while their Kickstarter was live, I didn't even ask them. I just shared it with my fans. So back in whenever it was, you know, like a year ago or more. And because I thought my fans would really like it. And so what I did was I went and talked to, so I sent an email, or it was a BGG message out to the folks behind Garful Games and said, hey, would you be interested in co-promoting Deliverance? I would be happy to promote a future game of yours, you know, as an in-kind, But I wanted to let you know I've already shared Ezra and Nehemiah. I'm really happy that you raised, there's like $322,000. And here's the post on Kickstarter that I made, sharing your stuff. And I'm really proud to have owned this. I'm looking forward to playing this soon. And they got back to me like, yeah, we should be able to do that. And that's a huge by itself, 5,000 active Kickstarter backer board gamers that play a game of we'll say very similar theme. The reason that it's similar is because it's a biblical game. And I mean, that's huge by itself. That could be potentially, let's say, our big, there's 800,000 people that are going to receive an email blast with an article that we wrote. But these 5,000 Kickstarter backers that see stuff, we could get a better result out of those 5,000 than the 800,000, because it's so targeted. And so I have a number of people that I've written down, either because they had projects that were similar, or because because we're friends and we've done a lot of work in the past, and they don't have like an immediate project that's launching right now. One of them is Sky Kingdom Games, and they did Isofarian Guard, and they were very happy to co-promote, because we make similar games, like very thematic experiences that are awesome. And I love their game, and I've shared it before, and they know that. They've shared me before, and it it's just like a very good way to cross promote. Like you make friends this way rather than asking people for things. I feel like half of the people in this world are like so narcissistic, they don't actually care if you live or die. And they might not feel that way, but they kind of show that in their actions. They're like, yeah, can you do this thing for me? But they don't care to help you. They're only reaching out so that you can help them. And that doesn't feel very good. Like as a person who's also a human that is trying to navigate this world, I'm looking for friends, right? And I'm not interested in like making more money for somebody and being a cash cow for them or whatever. I'm interested in developing relationships that can be mutually beneficial, and like symbiotic. And so starting that way is so much more important with co-promotion. Any other thoughts you had on co-promotion or anything else you wanted me to expand on?
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be other game publishers. I know that you've also done partnerships with podcasts like The Exorcist Files, which is about, I suppose, demonic possession and deliverance and things like that. So there's a very strong theme between Deliverance and that. In fact, this week I was talking to someone. I just met them like randomly at like a kids club. I was saying my kids too. Just got talking. Somehow Deliverance got brought up in the conversation. He's like, I've heard of that before. He's like, oh yeah, the Exodus Files. That's when you heard about it. I was like, oh yeah, okay. So I guess our advertising is working. So here's some like random person who's heard about Deliverance. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, it doesn't just have to be other publishers. You can have podcasts or websites or whatever, where if there's an overlap, then you can do cross promotion.
Absolutely. Another one that we have done that's been very, very successful for us is called the Babylon Bee. And the Babylon Bee, I have to be careful with that one because it's by its nature. So it's a satirical website that kind of politically is like right leaning. The Onion is a satirical website that is politically left leaning. But it just so happens that the editor in chief of the Babylon Bee loves Deliverance, and he's a big board gamer. I heard that he was a big board gamer, and that I should, they were playing something like it was like Star Wars Rebellion, which is like a big chonky game. I'm like, that's not like Monopoly. That's like, this guy is a real gamer. And so I reached out to him on Twitter, which I never used Twitter, but I seriously fired up my account, reset the password, figured it out. And it turned out he only lived like 2 hours from me. He's like, come over to my house, bring Deliverance. It's like, okay. So I ended up coming over, playing Deliverance. We did on like 2 separate occasions, had a game night where we played Deliverance, and he likes the game. And I'm like, well, Babylon Bee is a rather political organization, but if this guy is like editor-in-chief, podcast, whatever, like I will go anywhere that people will listen about Deliverance. I don't want to get mixed up politically because Deliverance is not a political thing. Yes, it has a Christian theme, but it's not like I'm saying like, Trump the savior is coming, or Kamala is going to save us all in the campaign or whatever. Like, there's nothing at all like that. But I'll go anywhere. I'll go anywhere, right leaning or left leaning or centrist or whatever, that will help me expose deliverance to the world. And so the Babylon Bee has been really a big advocate because of, again, the person that really likes deliverance. And so we've been able to leverage their, we were featured on their podcast. We got a bunch of people listening to us. We did, like, the first campaign, we did like 2 email blasts with the Babylon Bee. At the time, I think they had like 360,000 emails, and each email blast generated like at least $8,000 in revenue during our Kickstarter. It was really good. We did 2 email blasts with them. We're coming back, and their email list is now like 1.4 million. So they've added 1 million people to their email list, and it's gotten more expensive. It's like $12,000 for us to send an email blast. But yeah, if we made 8,000 with 300 and whatever thousand, then 1.4 million for, is basically twice the price or whatever. Yeah, that's going to be an awesome return. And, especially because the chief over there loves it, it's an easy choice. And so that we actually, one of our big advertising spends is Babylon Bee email blasts. And so, we don't need to, declare ourselves political just because we're able to leverage the Babylon Bee. But it would be like looking a gift horse in the mouth to not take advantage of that, of the special access that we have there. So again, it's all about people that love Deliverance and are willing to back it. So actually, we got an endorsement and a review written on BGG from Kyle. And it's like, why wouldn't we, leverage that to the max with the audience that knows who that person is, right? We've had discussions with other people that are big influencers in the Christian movie space and other things like that, with no real progress made on that front. But I know we have, like, for example, the Chosen, which is a really large Christian television production. It's like a show that's they're filming season 5 right now. We have people on staff that play Deliverance and love Deliverance, and we had the director of The Chosen, Dallas Jenkins, blast our first Kickstarter out, and it turns out that one of our fans turned out to be his college roommate, and sent him a text, and I communicated back and forth with them a little bit through the college roommate, and I got an email blast from a guy, or not an email blast, a Facebook post from a guy that had 2 million fans or something, and that was a huge benefit from us, or for us at the time. So that's definitely something we're looking to try to leverage in those ways. Hopefully there was some insight for people listening to this as to how to do that for themselves.
Great. Well, suppose we'll leave it there and let Robot Richard close us up.
There's one other thing. Before Robot Richard, I found that I was talking some head trash to myself. That we did this podcast a long time ago that was the 4.5 possible outcomes of your Kickstarter campaign, like when you launch your Kickstarter. And one of them was if you fail to fund, then if you barely fail, then you have a modest success, then you have great success, and then what we called catastrophic success, which is actually a bad thing, right? Catastrophic is not good if you have more success than you can handle. And I think that I've planned for each of these. I expect that I will not fail to fund. If I fail to fund, that's because something was wrong with the offer. I know that I'm going to pull my people and ask them what's going on and all that, and try to retool the campaign, and we would launch next year. But I do expect that we're going to have at least a decent success. We have, maybe 2,600 people following the page. We've got the Project We Love badge. And so I believe we're going to fund. We have, like I said, 8,000 emails, probably like 7,000 that are active, people that didn't give us their spam email or whatever. And so I believe that this is going to be fruitful. So I'm kind of planning for about what we did last time, between 300 to 350,000. If we do better, then awesome. But I kind of planned for that by making sure, if we do worse or if we do better, we're not going to. So we're doing stretch goals, but we're not going to unlock our really big stretch goals through, monetary. We're doing a weekly reveal of angels, which are the main thing you love in Deliverance, are more characters, more angel characters. And last time we actually had a problem where players were like, I don't know if we're going to reach this next stretch goal. I'm so sad. I want to unlock more angels. And they end up dropping their pledge, or the momentum, kind of stunts. And, I'd rather have people that are just very excited to see what the next reveal is going to be and know I'm going to show up on Wednesday. I know I'm going to get that reveal. Right. And so that's one of the major changes that we've made. And so I don't know if there's anything else to be shared about that, but there is this head trash, right? So I was like, if our campaign doesn't do as well as we hope, then it'll be okay, and this and that. I was talking the same. I never have those thoughts, but when it comes to, there comes a time the market is going to tell you how well they appreciate what it is that you've made, and that's a really hard moment or difficult moment. Because before it happens, like if I knew that we would, I was $60,000 in debt on their first campaign, and we hit launch and we made $140,000 in 8 hours. If I would have known, I would have walked around different. But I certainly was very humble at that time, preparing for rain, but not expecting as much as we got. And now I am in the same position where I'm not willing to walk around like, we're going to crush it and whatever. I know that there are some people that might do that in our position because we have a strong email list and other things like that. But what it really comes down to is like, I need to tell people, like, you've got to show up, right? Like our fans, like it matters if that you show up. And actually, anybody listening to this podcast, if you find value in what it is that we say, or if you find value in me using Deliverance as a case study to just open up everything so that you can see behind the scenes of, a campaign that's going live. Like if you appreciate that, then please, consider backing the campaign. Just search for Deliverance on Kickstarter and you'll find it. When this podcast releases, you could just follow when it launches, it'll launch the next day. It'll launch tomorrow. But I appreciate that support too. But yeah, it's interesting. I think that you have to be careful not to be so negative and just be willing to accept whatever you receive. I think that there's this, I could say, and I've had temptation to say, if we only make 150, then I'm disappointed, right? Like if we only make 150,000, what that means is this is probably the last expansion for Deliverance, that people enjoyed the game, they got the enjoyment that they wanted out of it, and that there might not be more of a market for it. That's not necessarily what it means if we make 150K, but it certainly is going to be a lot harder to justify, right? So if we make 350 or 400, then that means we get to make more. We get to make another expansion. If we make $1 million, then we probably will have a game in Barnes and Noble or Target or a retail edition that hits Amazon, and will actually be a real company with an evergreen product that sells and all that. And each of those will change what my life looks like in the future. And but none of those mean that I'm a failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just is what it is. Let the market tell you what the product is worth to them, and don't place your value in the amount of money you make. It's not the right way. Like I was just reading John Bunyan, who wrote Pilgrim's Progress, probably one of the very most famous stories of all time. That guy wrote that in prison, and he didn't become wealthy off of Pilgrim's Progress. That was a book written in like the 1600s. And yet it's like a massive intellectual property now. J.R.R. Tolkien with Lord of the Rings, or Dr. Theodore Geisel, Dr. Seuss. Dr. Seuss makes more money than any other author, and he's dead. You know, the value of the monetary value of his works are, I mean, it's just I think that he doesn't care anymore, right? But I think that you look at authors like artists like Monet and composers like Beethoven and whatnot. Those people became much more famous, and their works became much more famous after they died. And so, I was just thinking, Frank Peretti wrote a book called This Present Darkness, which is kind of like he's considered the godfather of Christian fiction. And because his book was great, it actually wasn't very successful until a woman named Amy Grant got a hold of it and told everybody that would listen what a great book it was. And then it exploded. That was after a couple of years, I think, of it being available. And then he had to write another one because it was so popular. And, it sold millions of copies, but it didn't sell them within the first 5 years. And so I think that, just because it is a low result doesn't mean that it's over, but it also maybe is like a little indicator of the market saying what it thinks about the product, it's willing to pay for the product, and how big or how niche the product is. The important thing that I want to get across to people listening is be willing to accept, as a child accepts, whatever happens. Because for me, it's very mortal and very normal. I'm writing about angels and demons, so I use that word now. It's very normal, very human to be frustrated that the thing you've worked on didn't pan out as you hoped. But it becomes a lot. It's like glass half empty versus glass half full. There are a lot of people who would just kill to, proverbially, or metaphorically, they would just love to make 150,000. They're just hoping that they can make, 50,000 on a crowdfunding campaign. And I'm like, well, 150,000 is not that great. How does that sound to, if I were in the past, looking at myself, my future self saying, 150,000 is not that great, I would be like, man, I would love to make 150,000. If I knew my project would make 150, that would make me so happy. But now that it's made 314,000 and another 190,000 afterward, and we sold $900,000 worth of product and sold out, my hope is that it of course overperforms and does well. I want it to be like Everdell, where the first game raised like 300K on Kickstarter, the next one did 600, the next one did 1.2 million, that kind of thing. I want that. I think everybody does. But it's just each individual case study, right? And another thing is, like, you've got this economy, maybe you have people that really, really want it, but are a little more strapped than expected, right? So, Tuesday is going to come, we're going to launch, we'll see what happens. And, I'll be happy either way, content, like a little child celebrating with my fans,
Great.
All right. And if you're listening to this, I hope you're there. We'll put a link in the show notes. But yeah, search Deliverance on Kickstarter, and please back my Kickstarter, I guess. If you find value in what it is that we share. So even if it's for like $5, I mean, that's much appreciated.
Sure is.
All right, Robot Richard, do your thing.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.